It is September 30th, 2010, a little more than a year from the end of the useful life of the PSP. A very important and even a little undervalued video game would arrive. Welcome to Chapter 4 of the Tenkaichi saga. This is Tenkaichi Tag Team.
Dragon Ball Z! Tenkaichi Tag Team!
Dragon Ball Z Tenkaichi Tag Team is what we all wanted and more from a Dragon Ball game, and more being on a portable console. That's why it is, from a certain point of view, impressive and has a very great merit. In the year 2008 or 2009, all the kids who owned Budokai Tenkaichi 3 or had the opportunity to play it dreamed of a game engine that would allow them to have that epic combat system on a portable console like the PSP was back then. The developers at Spike, neither short or lazy, taking advantage of the huge success of their trilogy with Budokai Tenkaichi on PlayStation 2, saw a great opportunity in the PSP market. So they got to work and developed a game with the original engine of Budokai Tenkaichi and with a graphic engine almost identical to the one we knew, but one that was possible to run on a PSP. And they did it with greatness. They did not conform to transferring this iconic game to a portable PlayStation, but they also added new and very eye-calling elements that complemented in an incredible way with the gameplay of this game. But to appreciate these features in the best way, let's go step by step. As always, we start with the story mode. So first, I will say that I like it. I very like how this method was implemented to tell the story on a portable console. We already had a very promising approach in 2006 with Shin Budokai and its different alternatives to tell Dragon Ball stories, but that will be a subject for our next video. Tenkaichi Tag Team for the first time gave players the possibility to play almost every major saga from the original story on PSP, even though a large number of them were omitted, such as the sagas of the movies and the saga of GT. The simple fact of telling us the story of Majin Buu in so detail on this console was already profit. But then, how was this story told? The gameplay worked the same way many of us knew from previous Budokai Tenkaichi installments, but surprisingly it was better achieved here, at least from my point of view. They put you in an environment to a certain explorable extent. You control the leaders of each chapter with this comic art and chibi kind of concept. You practically moved from point A to point B to make the events happen. Original dialogues from the manga and even fragments from the anime were used to give more context. The game has a very comfortable rhythm and it takes its time to give place to the most important dialogues and fights of these sagas in Dragon Ball. Even though this game comes from the repetitive and unambitious story modes of previous Tenkaichi games, not counting with Budokai Tenkaichi 2, please don't kill me, it doesn't appear as just a hasty attempt to bring their game to the portable market, but they did their homework well. This game knows a thing or two about narrative, and there are times where it stays away from any field of combat, learns how to shut up and be even poetic in its beginning, middle and end. These little interactions between characters give much more personality to the encounters than I've ever experienced with Budokai Tenkaichi 3, so much that they are even laughing at how authentic and faithful their style can be.
Alright, let the Cell Games begin!
Also keeping in mind that team fights would rarely benefit the narrative, with some main story fights where two or more characters faced a single opponent and vice versa. I was only a little disappointed by the fact that they included a Cyberman or a Frieza soldier to accompany a villain instead of leaving the fight in a 2 against 1 as it was in the series. This tag team system did not mean that you could use two characters and switch between them during the fight. What happens is that you choose a main character and a partner to both fight at the same time. Obviously you have some combo moves with your partner, but still this also makes 2v1 fights more interesting already. That is not a horde type fight. They are two opponents in the same conditions as you, attacking at the same time. The dubbing of this game was taken directly from Dragon Ball Kai, by the way. It was a little illusion, but I would have loved if with these small and head-banded representations of the characters were allowed to travel the path of the snake, to train with King Kai and have little extra missions on the road. something like that. Like some additional sections in the story mode, if there are many fighters available in the fight, you can choose with whom to fight to complete that scenario. The game does a good job of leveling the damage that enemies deal and receive in the game with respect to their power levels in the series. This makes side missions not feel so heavy. For example, almost every enemy you beat in this mode is unlocked for playing in versus mode. Overall, I feel this game did a very good job, even better than many others in this saga of games, at taking the greatest events in Dragon Ball Z story with the most important events without skipping chapters in an exaggerated way as Tenkaichi 3 did. Going down to what the gameplay and other game modes offered in this mythical delivery, we had the survival mode, which although was not an innovative mode ever seen in a fighting game or anime arcade, it was this comfortable space where you could play by yourself, beating all the opponents you could until your character could do no more, adding the possibilities of having a second character on your side, an element that we will talk about a little later. The What If saga returned with its mythical appearances of battles in context that we had never imagined, a game mode that was also very well received in previous Tenkaichi titles. The Battle 100 mode allows you to face a series of challenges with some rules established as we choose fighters to our like, ideal to get more improvement points, but in essence it was still this classic game mode of constant challenge where we must win in 100 different occasions. However, it is not such a simple and flat concept. These battles offered a feature that was in fact a key factor for the initial marketing of the game: its multiplayer strategy. Even in the trailer of the game, they make a special mention that now with the interconnection function, we could play among friends with not only one or two, but with 3 other people. This raised the expectations of the game in 1,000 and has been one of those special occasions in which the hype was totally worth it. Spike delivered a seamless interconnection feature for this game in these battles that required more than 2 devices to interact in the same ecosystem at the same time. It is noticed from afar that this was going to be a crucial feature for the development of this game, and they managed to polish in a brutal way for its time. What a multiplayer experience that was. Of course, before we could play fights between friends in the first 2 installments of Shin Budokai with the interconnection function, but now up to 4 people could do it to test who were the best team. Without doubt, the multiplayer had an immense improvement, very innovative for its time with this function. However, some mechanics were affected due to this 2-on-2 combat where you must select a target. Here we are going to see some of them. For example, the continuation of combos after an engage with a speed attack or ki. When executing the maximum speed powers, you have to press as much as you can in the circle to increase the damage at the same time that the rival tries to reduce it. In addition, since the controls were different on a PSP, some functions had to change, like rising and fly down with the crosshead. The giant enemies and the transformations in Great Apes were also omitted. Maybe it was a little more complicated to put this section into the port made for the version of PSP, and it is completely understandable. It is not as if it generated a major change in the game's roster, thing that was also considerably reduced compared to Budokai Tenkaichi. I reiterate, even so, it is not bad at all for a portable game. There are 70 characters in this game, counting with the transformations. Returning to the gameplay, in this title, when your health reaches 0, you can use sensu beans to revive and continue the fight. This depends on the objects you have in the personalization section, and they also give you some in the story mode. What is not convincing me in terms of design is that the rival's life bar is only being above his character, not like ours. We cannot see his ki, which is also quite important. We know by rule that when you play a fighting game, one of the main rules to stay alert is to look at your rival, not at your character. Well, it seems that they do not care much about this factor. In a fighting game, the decisions you make when attacking are primary, knowing if it is the right time or not, and the state of your opponent depends a lot on that. If you cannot see if his ki is enough to counter your attacks, how do you know if you are making a good decision? The game lets you notice if his ki is maximum when he has this electrical aura around, but it's still not enough. For example, in Naruto Storm 4, you you know when it is viable to maintain the pressure on your rival when they have no chakra. There are very few options that your rival has to defend themselves when he is in this situation. However, all these may not be worth anything since this could only be played interconnected at the time where the majority of young people had PSP fever. Now I do not think it is possible. Finally, regarding local fights, it is a little more difficult to find situations in which you can collide powers because the animations where these techniques that are activated do not leave the space-time of the fight, that is, they cannot be interrupted by a rival's attack. Let's remember that these epic minigames and animations were some of the favorite features of the players in those times. In conclusion, Tenkaichi Tag Team is an incredible game, truly amazing for its time and a very good example of ports from which many should take an example, not only on this aspect but in some gameplay features that would do very good for Dragon Ball games of the present. I very like the combinations that can be executed with more than one character on the field. The chain chases give a lot of dynamism and a fresh touch to the fights. The story mode is very warm and entertaining, and I'm sure many of you should give it a chance to relive it if you still have a PSP or have the possibility to install it in an emulator on your PC. It is a jewel that should not be so easily forgotten. Even more if we take into account that the next installment of the franchise sadly would not even reach the heels. We will be seeing it in the next chapter. Write down below in the comments what you liked the most about Tenkaichi Tag Team when you played it more than 10 years ago, and if you have not had the chance to play it yet, share your thoughts about this video and if I helped you to contextualize a little more with the delivery. Guys, thank you so much for watching, that was all for today, and I will be watching you in the next video. Take care and see ya!